Okay, for those of you who don't know, my name is Carl Cram, and I'm the chairman of ASNE Day 2015, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you here today. Before we begin the program, if you'd all rise and please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please be seated. For those of you who are new to ASNE Day, welcome. For those returning, welcome back. As vice chair last year, I was proud to be a part of the ASNE Day revamp. In addition to the traditional speakers, panels, and papers, we reached out to a variety of communities of experts to coordinate tracks dedicated to key topics. It was such an overwhelming success that this year we expanded to add even more different subject areas. I hope you'll explore the many opportunities to learn and to network with the best in our business. We are already planning ASNE Day 2016, and if you have any suggestions, we appreciate you providing that feedback to myself or our vice chair, Rick White, who I think is here somewhere. There he is, put your hand up. And he'll be the chair next year. Rick and I are available to take any of your comments and suggestions throughout the next 2 days. We also stand ready to engage you in the committee work. I'll take this opportunity to thank the 2015 committee. ASNE Day 2015 promises to be an incredible event, and it could not have been achieved without their hard work. I was proud to be a part of such a talented group of people, and I would be quite remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of them. However, pointing out each individual would be very difficult at this time, so hopefully as you see the folks over the next 2 days, you'll take the opportunity to thank them for their hard work. Please be sure to visit the ASNE Day exhibit hall on the level directly above us. You'll have a chance to view interesting displays and learn about the wide range of terrific companies, academic institutions, government activities, and other organizations that all play a significant role in our profession. I cannot stress enough that the success of ASNE Day is made possible largely because of the support of our sponsors and exhibitors. We are grateful for the financial support that has made this terrific symposium possible. I'll first like to thank Northrop Grumman, a silver level sponsor for the Continental Breakfast this morning. Thank you, Northrop. And thank you to all our ASNE Day sponsors. Our platinum level sponsor is L3 Marine and Power Systems. Our gold level sponsor is Lockheed Martin. Our silver level sponsors are ABS, General Atomics, Gibbs & Cox, Huntington Ingalls Industries, McKean Defense Group, Northrop Grumman, Oracle, SAIC, and Tridentis. Our bronze level supporters are the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, the ASNE flagship and Tidewater sections, CDI Corporation, the Naval Engineering Education Center, Philadelphia Gear, Shipbuilders Council of America, and Siemens. A quick housekeeping note, for those of you who aren't aware, the bathrooms are out to your right and then immediate right. And as you go through the day, please make sure you look at the exit signs and are aware where they are in case of a fire. Now, without any further ado, it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Glenn Ash, the President of the American Society of Naval Engineers.
Well, I guess I'm going to do a few things here which scare the ASNE staff tremendously. I'm going to go off script every once in a while, so bear with me. But what I would first like to do, Carl thanked them, but what I want to do is, we didn't give them a round of applause. So if there anybody in here in the organizing committee, Carl, I'd like for you to stand, any of your committee that's in here, I'd like for you guys to stand up. And I think we should give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. They're all out working, so. First of all, off script, the 400-pound gorilla that's sitting right here in the middle of the room, what do we do? I've had the question from several people, what do we do about the snow? Well, we're going to have to play it by ear. We're going to continue on with whatever we can do, and there'll be further information coming out tomorrow. So if you, this afternoon. So if you see me or anybody on the staff and you're wondering what's going to happen or what we're going to do, please grab us and we'll give you the latest update that we have. We have about 300 people staying in the hotel. So we'll probably continue on with something. We'll have to see how it goes. And, but it'll be fun. The worst is that we go to the bar and sing karaoke. So. And that'll be really bad when I get up. So, welcome to all of you. It's a great honor to be able to welcome you back to ASNE Day 2015. The best part of it has already started, meeting new friends, greeting old friends, and catching up, and talking to all of you. And I'm looking forward to continuing that during the next day and a half or 2 days. As Carl mentioned, we've expanded the program considerably. It's a very energetic program. I hope that we can get in as much of it as we can, including tomorrow. We've got naval engineering topics. We've got women in naval engineering. We have unmanned and autonomous systems things going on, future Navy programs, and cybersecurity, all the hot buttons that are being discussed today. We've got the Flexible Ships panel, which is a very intense discussion going on within the acquisition community right now, and the Global Shipbuilding Executive Summit is teaming up with them to focus on that this afternoon. We've got space vehicles and technologies, things going on tomorrow, including panelists from Sierra Nevada, Virgin Galactic, X-Corps, and more. So I hope that we can continue with that. This year's ASNE Day panel is focusing on affordability. Gee, imagine that, affordability in naval ship acquisition. Who came up with that one? And we've added a SysCom agency panel, and Rear Admiral Dave Lewis is back for his program management track in his new role as commander of SPA War. So it's a pretty energetic program. We're again honored to partner with the Marine Machinery Association spring meeting. That's been a very successful thing for the last 2 years, and we're looking forward to continuing it. Their event is running concurrently tomorrow, though I believe a few of the Marine Machinery people are with us today, and welcome. We're glad to have you here. I want to thank MMA's chairman, Jack Janatatis, and their president, Steve Meisen, for their support in making this cooperation a great success. Tomorrow's MMA Counterpoint panel is open to all ASNE Day attendees, and it's always a lot of fun. It's like the Saturday Night Live skit with the opposing right and left person, so it'll be a lot of fun. I always look forward to that. I would also like to recognize the Naval Engineering Education Center, whose support has helped our student program grow each year. It's been a welcome surprise that they've continued to increase their support, and we're so grateful for it. We've got people participating in the over 900 people that are registered from the ages of 17 all the way up through in their 80s. I won't mention exactly the top age, but the students are extremely vital to us, and a few of them went out to the Coast Guard Yard yesterday on a student tour, and I think the reports I heard back that it was extremely interesting. And our new executive director inaugurate, the Dauphin, Dr. McHugh, went out there with them, and so I think they had a good time. Yeah. I would encourage all of you to attend the student poster section. There's a great number of posters out there, and the students worked hard to produce those. Take a look at those, and if you would like to volunteer, still volunteer to be a judge in the competition, just let someone on the staff know. We can always use more judges. While not noted in your program, you will also see several different STEM groups running around ASNE Day. In total, we have nearly 300 students from grades 6 through 12, as well as our college and graduate students. And they're all interested in engineering. If you see some young ones, talk to them. Engage in them. Even 5 minutes or 5 seconds as a mentor will be appreciated. I know it will. So let's give them a hearty welcome and an introduction to our program. Now, over the last few years, much of my ASNE work has focused on developing our international relationships. Last year, the Society of Naval Architects of Korea led a delegation from the Republic of Korea that made a presentation here at ASNE Day, and we have presented at their last 2 naval ship technology conferences in Korea. Following ASNE Day last year, we signed a formal cooperative agreement between the 2 societies, and I'm happy to report that they are again with us here at ASNE Day. Now, I can't see because of the blinding lights, so I hope that they're out there. Dr. Jun-Young Chung, who is chairman of the Naval Ship Technology Committee for the Society of Naval Architects of Korea, which is essentially the counterpart to ASNE. Dr. Yun-Ho Shin is his colleague and is here with him. And they're accompanied by Mr. Jung Hwan Kim, who's a Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Hyundai Heavy Industries, who leads their Special and Naval Shipbuilding Group, and Mr. Hu Man Jung, also from HHI, who is in charge of their conceptual design for naval shipbuilding. So if you see them, engage them. There's an interesting thing going on at, I think it's at 10:45. I'll be there. Many of you recall the sinking of the ROK Navy ship Chinan. Admiral Eccles led a group from here that went over and supported the Koreans in doing the forensics work to identify what happened to that ship. And Dr. Jung, who is with the Korean Institute for Materials and Machinery, was part of that group, and he's a senior researcher there, and he did a lot of the post-investigative work on recreating the situation using structural dynamics programs, and he's going to present a special presentation today, and I would invite all of you to attend. It's going to be very interesting. So we'd like to welcome them. Are our Korean visitors here? Please stand up. And we'd like to give you a round of applause and welcome you here. Another example of our ASNE's growing international collaboration is the Global Shipbuilding Executive Summit, an invitation-only event that's held in both the United States and in India and co-sponsored by Siemens PLM Software. I would like to thank Mr. Tim Nichols from Siemens, who has worked tirelessly for the last 7 years in putting these together. And Tim, would you please stand up? Anyway, well, let's give a round of applause to Tim. Now, I'd like to invite all of you to join us today for our gala awards ceremony. I have a lot more to say about it, but I'm not, because I noticed that our speaker is here, our keynote speaker, and I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker and bring him to the podium, and it's my pleasure to do so. The Honorable Sean Stackley was confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition in July 2008, and survived all these years. All right, but I want to, just like last year, I want to say something.
Quit while you're ahead.
I want to say something. Sean is not only a fantastic secretary working in his position, but he's a good friend, and he listens to us all, and he's always a friend of ASNE's and willing to participate. And Sean, I want to personally thank you for your commitment. You're here all the time, and we will welcome you back all the time. So thank you very much.
Trying to blind me with these lights. What are you guys using? Secretary of the Navy knew about how much energy you're burning up right now. I'd be in big trouble. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to join you again this year, and a particular thanks for your support to our Navy and Marine Corps. If you're from D.C., how many folks are from D.C.? Now, let me start. How many folks are from out of town? This is important. Okay, good number. If you're from out of town, you have to understand that once there is the report that there might be precipitation in the future, much less snow or ice, a panic starts to grip the city. And we got that coming our way. And I hope it doesn't disrupt the two-day event here. You've got a great lineup that's been scheduled. Years ago, the Supreme Court was hearing a case on global warming. Now, this is important for all of you engineers to understand. There's a very important lesson here. So no less than Justice Scalia was listening to a scientist explain to him the phenomenon of global warming. And Scalia, lawyer, like most of our legislators, listening to this scientist, he just said, he repeated back something that he thought the scientist said, and the scientist corrected him. The scientist corrected the justice, and Scalia doesn't have much patience for being corrected. Came back, he says, troposphere, schlopposphere, I don't care what you call it, just tell me, when is it going to happen? Okay, we're engineers. We've got to communicate with a lot of folks who don't get it, and we got to kind of break it down into explanations that they can understand so they can help us out, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Well, it's great to see so many familiar faces. In fact, as I think of global warming, I'm staring right at Vince Demetti, who Vince is thankful for global warming. He's a long friend to everybody here in the room, and he had moved down to Florida to keep warm. He heard global warming, and he's now working in Milwaukee, continuing to support our Navy and Marine Corps. Welcome, Vince, and so many others of you here in the room. Our SysComs and program offices, warfare centers, shipbuilders, combat systems houses, engineering firms, equipment suppliers, all here today. And universities, MIT and Webb, Maryland and the Naval Academy, Virginia Tech and Florida State, Texas and Pitt, Harvard and Villanova, Rowan University and Old Dominion, Penn State and Tennessee, Michigan and Iowa. Yes, I said Iowa. For even in Iowa, 1,000 miles from the sea, it remains true that we are a maritime nation. Count them up. That's 16 universities participating at the event. It's the naval engineering equivalent of March Madness. I'm not biased, but I'm going with MIT versus the Naval Academy in the championship. Now, for those college students from out of town, there are a few rules about Washington you should keep in mind before engaging in 2 days of discussion on naval engineering with people from headquarters. And perhaps the most important rule is that a person can be from Washington, and that person can be right. But he can't be both at the same time. And this is particularly true if that person works in the Pentagon. Don't repeat that to Frank Kendall when he's here tomorrow. Well, Glenn, you have put on a particularly impressive agenda this year, from advanced technologies in unmanned systems, power systems, combat systems, to major shipbuilding programs. Our carrier program, the high replacement, Zumwalt, Flight 3 destroyer, the LCS and the future frigate, and our future amphibious ship, the LXR, all on the agenda, along with key topics in cyber, STEM, women in naval engineering, and one very dear to me, affordability. I thought I'd give you a broad brush of what's on my plate and then save some time for questions at the end. First, we have a requirement for a 300-ship Navy. 306 ships to be exact. More recently, the Chief of Naval Operations has signed an updated force structure assessment outlining the mix and number of ships that we require to provide for our national security. And today, in response to combatant commanders' demands around the world, we're able to provide about 285 ships, of which about 100 are deployed overseas at any one time. So we've got work to do. Now, our plan to build a 300-ship Navy is contained in a report we submit to Congress each year, referred to as the 30-year shipbuilding plan, and many of you here are familiar with it. Now, as an action officer working for Mike Hamas in Daz and Ships some 17 years ago, I had the unique experience of getting the first such report drafted, coordinated, and over to the Hill. Now, let me simply describe that coordinating on a plan for building ships over a 3-decade period taught me a lesson in patience and persistence that has served me ever since. I learned an entirely new lesson, however, the very next year when it came time to update the plan by just 1 year. How hard could that be? The answer is very hard, because we effectively tossed out the prior year's plan and wrote up an entirely new one. This pattern of rewriting the 30-year plan every year would persist, such that by the time I was working on the Hill, now receiving this report each year, it had been dubbed the 30-day shipbuilding plan. That churn has ended. The fact is that America's ability to influence events around the world, to provide stability and security in an ever increasingly uncertain world, is underwritten by those 100 ships deployed around the world today, our fleet at sea. It is our Navy which makes the United States a global power. And more than merely a plan, that 30-year shipbuilding report we provide to Congress is a statement of national policy, and for our Navy, one of purpose and commitment. Second, we're facing major technical challenges with the development, design, construction, and testing of our newest ships, aircraft, and weapon systems. The incredible machines that we put in the hands of our sailors and Marines. From the Gerald Ford CVN-78, with her electromagnetic aircraft launching system, advanced arresting gear, dual band radar, an entirely new reactor plant, advanced weapons elevators, added survivability features, 10 million feet of cable, and automation. To the Zumwalt DDG-1000, with her 78 megawatts of integrated power, her 155 advanced gun systems, cutting-edge stealth, and more, much more automation. To the Littoral Combat Ship, employing a system of unmanned systems to conduct what is arguably the most challenging mission we've got, mine countermeasures. Or swapping out that mission package, employing the most effective suite of acoustic sensors we've got on a surface ship to detect submarine targets multiple convergence zones away. To the Flight 3 destroyer, with her air and missile defense radar that's got a radar gain of about 40 times that of today's best radar, the Spy-1, and a missile, SM-3, able to take advantage of that radar gain. To the Virginia attack submarine, our asymmetric threat, and with her future Virginia payload module, will more than triple the undersea strike capability of this first strike platform. To the Ohio replacement submarine, the Navy's top priority program, being designed with a simple philosophy that this submarine will be the most survivable leg of our strategic weapons triad through the year 2080. Add to this list the first-of-class big-deck amphib, the America, and the mobile landing platform, and the joint high-speed vessel, all at sea, the latter having recently completed their maiden deployments. The recently christened afloat forward staging base and the soon-to-be completed LHA-8 and the replacement fleet oiler TAOX. Then add to this list the Joint Strike Fighter and P-8A Poseidon and E-2D Advanced Hawkeye and the Navy's high-endurance unmanned aircraft, the Triton, and lest we forget, the MV-22 Osprey. Within a 10-year period, the Navy has transformed itself, recapitalizing every major warfare system we've got. Each has posed major challenges, but not insurmountable, and the thousands of naval engineers we have tackling those challenges across the country are truly advancing the science of warfare. And once the first of its kind has been built, the rest follow with great success. It is, as not the great engineer, but the great economist Adam Smith described in his classic, The Wealth of Nations. The machines that are first invented to perform any particular movement are always the most complex. And succeeding artists generally discover that with fewer wheels, with fewer principles of motion than had originally been employed, the same effects may be more easily produced. So we move on now to building with fewer wheels and fewer principles of motion. Third, we're facing very real challenges with keeping whole the strategic industrial base that we rely upon to design and build those incredible machines and weapon systems. In many respects, the capabilities of our industrial base are the envy of the world. It goes with being the largest and most capable Navy in the world. The fact is, however, that we've been at low rate production on many of our major programs for going on 2 decades now. And the industry of today that supports our Navy and Marine Corps are the survivors of consolidation and mergers and restructuring, such that the elasticity in our system is taken up. I'm preparing to sign out a report to Congress on our shipbuilding industrial base, and the assessment I draw is that many of our major shipbuilders are one shipbuilding contract away from going out of business. This calls for policies that protect as necessary and as a minimum carefully weigh the health of our industrial base going forward. Fourth, we're facing tough budget challenges. If you paid any attention to Secretary Carter's testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee yesterday, it was 3 grueling hours, first and foremost about the dire consequences to our national security if Congress fails to reverse the across-the-board budget cuts. It's a word I've grown to hate, sequestration. Here we are at mid-year in 2015 with a budget on the Hill that defines what we need to protect the nation for the year beginning in just 6 months from now. And a law passed in 2011 stands between us and that national security. Fifth, we are facing an increasing threat that promises to challenge our naval supremacy. China's investments in its military, from nuclear submarines to 5th-generation fighters to anti-ship, cruise, and ballistic missiles, is particularly impressive. And Russia is returning to the blue waters. And their budgets, they're not being sequestered. Given that series of challenges, what's our strategy? Well, we have got to maintain and modernize the fleet at sea today. The only way we build our way to the 300-ship Navy that we need is by ensuring the ships in our inventory today are mission capable and relevant for their full service life. We're midway through our midlife refueling overhauls of the Ohio class and our refueling complex overhauls of the Nimitz class. We're on the back end of modernizing the LSD-41 class amphibs, and perhaps most significantly, we're on the front end of modernizing our Aegis cruisers and destroyers. Come what may in the budget environment, we need to complete this effort. Second, we will maintain our priority on shipbuilding. Secretary Mavis stated it squarely to the Congress. Because cuts to our shipbuilding programs are the least reversible in their impact on our fundamental mission of providing presence and in their consequences to the industrial base, we are committed to the maximum extent possible to preserve ship construction should further budget reductions, such as sequestration, become reality. The fleet under construction is 65 ships strong, 13 ship classes under contract and construction across 8 shipyards. Perhaps the most telling statistic, one that most of you here today have had a hand in. The Navy will take delivery of 16 ships in 2016. We will maintain our priority on shipbuilding. We will keep whole our investment in future capability. Our naval superiority relies upon our technical superiority. And we have that technical edge on our warfare systems in our fleet at sea today. We have that edge in our fleet under construction today. We need to ensure we maintain that edge in our fleet in planning and development for the future. And so as I describe the role of our 30-year shipbuilding plan, we will likewise construct a 30-year research and development plan to guide our investments in those future warfighting capabilities that will ensure that our Navy is not merely the largest in the world, but that our Navy remains the most powerful in the world. I brought on board Dr. John Burrow, who alongside the Chief of Naval Research, Rear Admiral Matt Winter, will be working across our vast naval research and development establishment to build that plan. And they will be reporting to the Vice Chief, the Assistant Commandant, and myself to ensure the plan is properly endorsed and properly resourced to meet our long-term needs. And across our 3 fleets, as Admiral Meyer dubbed them, the fleet at sea, the fleet under construction, and the fleet in planning and development, we will maintain our continuity of purpose, and affordability will be a requirement. There's not a major program going forward that will not be subject to an affordability cap. From the CVN 79 John F. Kennedy to the future frigate that will succeed the LCS, to the future amphibious warfare ship, the LXR, to the amphibious combat vehicle or the ship-to-shore connector that will one day deploy from her well deck. Not even that highest of priority programs, the Ohio replacement, will escape the requirement to be affordable. And it can't be done by merely cutting the budget. Our strategy has been and will continue to be to drive affordability through the design of our systems, to maintain an iron grip on requirements and changes to that design, to bring year-over-year stability to our shipbuilding program, and then to leverage that stability through multi-year procurements and block buys, to incentivize industry to invest in their facilities and their people, and to compete when competition is possible up and down the supply chain. And the message to this group, if you want to be a successful naval engineer, you better be a good cost engineer. There's no other way forward. Which brings me to my final point. Most importantly, we need good people. These are extremely, extraordinarily challenging times, made all the more difficult by the Byzantine programming, budgeting, and acquisition system we are subject to. Success comes by way of good people, developers, designers, builders, testers, maintainers of ships, aircraft, combat systems, naval engineers. And we've got good people. We've got great people. In the course of the past couple weeks, I've had the great pleasure and privilege of sitting at the table with the likes of Jack Evans, Chris Mercer, Doug Small, Tom Drugan, Tom Anderson, Mark Vandroff, Dan Brinsinghofer, Bo Duarte, Bert Pridgeon, Artie Mabbitt, on, and flag officers like Chris Bogdan, Brian Antonio, Dave Gale, Dave Johnson, on, and their counterparts in industry, we've got great people. This past fall, I received a letter from Senators Levin and McCain asking for a 5-page letter on what do I recommend Congress do to help us improve acquisition. This comes under the category of be careful what you ask for. I thought about that response for a long time. In fact, when it was due, I called up and said, I need an extension. I hadn't written down one idea yet. I know what Congress does when they get a good idea. In the end, after considering the programs that have enjoyed the greatest success, my conclusion is that the great technical and programmatic challenges that come with designing and building the most complex machines in the world, these challenges cannot be overcome by new legislation. They can only be overcome by way of good people. So Congress, to help us get more good people. We're all familiar with the expression, it takes a village. Well, when it comes to designing and building the most powerful Navy in the world, it takes a nation. So in closing, I would like to leave you all with a quote I'm very fond of. It's more than a quotation. It's a call to action. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, a Frenchman. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, to divide the work and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. With that in mind, I thought today would be the appropriate occasion to give special recognition to an individual who has touched each of us here, has taught each of us to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Each year, I have the opportunity to give out awards for individuals who have made special accomplishments on behalf of our Navy. This year, rather than simply give out an award, I wanted to memorialize that individual who has taught each of us to yearn for the vast and endless sea, to name the award in his honor so that each year as we present it, we are reminded of his contributions and we seek to match his efforts and his contribution throughout his career on behalf of our Navy, on behalf of industry, our government, having served in our government, having served inside the office of the Assistant Secretary for Research, Development, and Acquisition, having served as the President of the American Society for Naval Engineers. We are naming our Maritime Technology Transition Award to be given out each year in honor of Mr. Ron Kiss. And I look forward to my next opportunity to meet with Ron and shake his hand and thank him for his inspiration to all of us here today. So with that, with what time is remaining, if I can, I'd be happy to entertain any questions from the audience.
Good morning. This is Laura Seligman from Inside the Navy.
Well, why is it that 1,000 people in the room and the first one that comes up to the mic is the press? Come on, folks. Engineers, speak up.
I got here first.
Okay, go ahead. Go for it. Speak on their behalf.
Okay, so you were talking about the Aegis modernizations. So I was wondering if you could give us a couple more details about the plan to reduce combat modernizations of one per year, I think starting in FY18. So when is that going to start? How much money is that going to save? What is the impact overall of reducing the scope of these modernizations? And can you give me a breakdown of overall how many ships are going to be modernized to the full extent?
Holy Toledo, I feel like I'm at a hearing. I feel like I'm at a hearing. Well, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, look, here it is. A couple key points. Okay, the backbone of our fleet, the workhorse of our fleet is our Aegis cruisers and destroyers. We have 84 today at sea, and that number is growing. But the reality is that our cruisers are at midlife. In fact, they're eclipsing midlife, and our destroyers are entering midlife. Two things we've got to do. One, we've got to get them to their full service life. And in fact, in the Flight 2As, we're going to look to extend their service life. So we've got to get them at that midlife, get their upgrades in place, get the degree of ballistic missile defense that we need at sea to get our BMD ship count up. In the particular case of the cruisers, we've been wrestling with the Congress in terms of the best way forward to modernize our cruisers, but the one thing that we're all agreed upon is we've got to get them modernized. So last year, what they authorized and appropriated was what's been referred to as the 246 plan. And so we're moving out on it. The time for discussion and debate is over. Now we've got to get on with planning and execution on the cruisers. In the case of the destroyers, across the Flight 1, Flight 2, Flight 2As, what we're wrestling with is, one, getting to the extent possible to common baselines. We're particularly focused on getting our BMD ship count up because the demand is high, and we need the degree of flexibility across the broader fleet in order to accomplish that. And the common baseline needs to be stretching across both cruisers and destroyers. So inside of this budget environment, we're trying to keep that as whole as possible. And across our industrial base, we're trying to manage the award and execution to ensure that the amount of work that we put out there can be accomplished reliably on schedule within our budget. So the specifics of which hull, et cetera, I recommend you turn to our budget exhibits. When you start talking about FY18 and out, what we're doing is we're putting a marker down in terms of what we need to do. But as everybody here is well aware, sometimes fleet operations cause various ships to swap in and out of that plan. Most importantly, and you hear this consistently, everybody that's been up to the Hill has hammered the issue home. You hit us with sequestration, and you take away our ability to deliver that capability in terms of numbers, in terms of capability, system by system. So we are fighting off the issue of sequestration in order to be able to execute the plan that we've got on the Hill today. Okay?
Thank you.
I didn't mean to pound on you there, Laura. It's just amongst us friends.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing today? First off, I'm impressed with the fact that just a mere mention of the fact that the lights are bright, you can get them to automatically dim. There's a certain aura you brought to the table. There, you know, they just sort of did that for you.
Make enough noise and...
Yeah. What I have in mind is to ask you is the health of the workforce, the skills, the technical skills.
Yeah, good.
Across the spectrum of engineering, I don't care whether it's airplanes or ships, but where are you worried, where are you confident, where do we need to increase the skill base?
Yeah, okay, a couple of things there. First, you can go back, where's Sully? Sully? I think of this man first and foremost when they're trying to climb out of the hole in terms of engineering expertise back in 2007, 2008 timeframe. The reality is, you know, we had slashed 55% of our acquisition workforce, engineers, contracts officers, et cetera, over the period of the mid-90s to midway through the first decade of this century. And we had to turn that around. So the first thing you have to do is come up with the argument of why you got to turn that around. And that means going out and figuring out what do we need in terms of skills, experience, and location for engineers and our acquisition professionals. I pointed Sully because of all the plans, he put out the most coherent one, and in fact, to this day, it's in execution in terms of giving us the ammunition that we need to go back and fight for the billets to bring the people on board. So since that 2008 timeframe, we've brought about 5,000 on board, from headquarters to soup ships and across the field. That's good. That's good. Now we got to fight to hold on to those, because the first thing that you start to hear with the budget pressures is to cut the government workforce. Holy Toledo, didn't we learn that lesson? I mean, how many times do we have to learn this lesson? So we're hammering back. We can't afford any further cuts to our acquisition workforce. We need to hold what we've got, or we're going to relive some of the fantastic failures that we experienced in the decade prior to rebuilding, that everybody understands was because we, the government, had treaded too far. That's government workforce. The bigger picture issue, though, is what does the nation need in terms of engineering? And this one's a bit trickier. I talked about the shipbuilding industrial base. You know, the shipbuilding industrial base, the manufacturing side, cannot be separated from the engineering side, okay? And as you look at our, I mentioned 8 shipyards where we've got the 65 ships under construction. They're all in various stages in terms of the engineering work that they've got going on. I would tell you, submarine world is extremely healthy in terms of workload. Between the Ohio replacement, Virginia payload modules coming, supporting in-service, et cetera, the submarine side of the engineering industrial base is in very good shape in terms of workload. What we've got to make sure is we've got the skilled engineers to handle the workload. There's a lot of things that are uncertain going forward. The one thing that's not uncertain is that Ohio replacement will be our #1 priority for the next, pick it, 20 years until they're all out there. And that means that all other work has got to be done around the work associated with delivering that submarine on schedule at the degree of quality that the nation's going to demand. You move on to carriers, and I want to be careful to not walk shipbuilding program by shipbuilding program. But when you move on to carriers, and we're on the back end of the Ford. And that was a mountain of work in terms of getting the Ford development and design, and now we're completing the execution of the lead ship. So that's what do you do with that skilled workforce that you built up? Okay, now what you don't want to do is simply lose them, and then as you start to march shipyard by shipyard, program by program, you see peaks and valleys. Now let me overlay on top of that this thing called affordability. One of the, frankly, our approaches to affordability, we did just recapitalize our fleet. In case you all didn't notice, okay, if you weren't working overtime the last decade, we did just recapitalize our fleet, and that's a great thing. That's a great thing, and that was a huge mountain in terms of engineering and construction work. When we look ahead, Rocky, I like to quote from movies. Everybody remember the end of the movie Rocky? I don't want a rematch. There ain't gonna be a rematch. Okay, we don't want to go through that experience again. 7 lead ships at the same time going through the system. A lot of pain for the system. When you do look at the next 10 years or so, and you look at where are we going with new ships, LXR, well, we're going to leverage the LPD-17 hull form for all the right reasons. The frigate, that future frigate, we're leveraging the LCS hull form, basic ship, for all the right reasons. There used to be a cruiser in our 30-year plan in the 2020s. You don't see that today. That cruiser estimate was about $6 billion. The nation couldn't afford it, could not afford it. But I'm worried that we don't have a clear plan for a cruiser going forward. So I discussed this long-range R&D plan. I'm looking for Dr. Burrow and Admiral Winter working with the sponsors, working with the design and engineering community to start pointing towards what technologies, what capabilities, what timeline to support a cruiser capability in our fleet, time to support the retirement of the CG-47 class. So let me summarize. A lot of engineering work in our rearview mirror. some very key projects right before us, but a need to leverage mature technologies and repeat hull designs to the extent possible as we march our way through what is going to be a tough, tough budget environment. That puts our engineering industrial base at peril somewhat, okay? I can't point at, I can point at workload curves across the board for ships and aircraft. I don't have that picture for engineering. And that's something that we need to do with the broader design community to get a good handle on the key skills that we need to preserve, going forward, okay? That's a task ahead of us. Good question.
Mr. Secretary, thanks again for being with us. As you probably know, part of my heart lies with where I did a lot of work, which was Military Sealift Command. And I know we have the TAOX in the future. Are there discussions now about recapitalizing the other parts of the Military Sealift Command to support sealift, maritime prepositioning, and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I actually think about that a lot. Because that's a part of our fleet that's not inside of our 30-year shipbuilding plan. The maritime prepositioning ships, the ready reserve force, you look at the amount of lift that we have that really falls under MSC and MARAD. I can tell you that we discuss the problem, but we do not have a marker down in something that looks like a budget to get ahead of it. Now, we have time. This is an issue that's beyond the fit-up, but what we've got to do is start to get people's attention to it, because also beyond the fit-up is the Ohio replacement. And while it's not, what you just described is not inside of our SCN, our Shipbuilding Conversion Navy account, it's all the same federal budget. And it will be competing for resources in that period. So is John Kaskin here? Hi, John. Do you want to take that question? John was, I would describe him as, was the conscience in the Pentagon on this issue. And it doesn't have the same grab that a sea-based strategic deterrent or an aircraft carrier in an 11 aircraft carrier Navy or the next cruiser has inside of our program. But time comes that we need that ready reserve force. By God, those will be the most important ships that we've got. And it's also for our industrial base. It's going to be a key component in terms of that synergistic relationship between our Navy and our industrial base to help keep them healthy, while much of our SCN is focused on high replacement and such. Okay.
One more question. I think that's all we have time for.
Sir.
Oh, you got to understand now, when I leave here, I'm going back to the Pentagon, so. No, I don't want to.
Any day out of the Pentagon's a good day, sir. One of the questions, from an engineer perspective and program manager perspective, how do we as engineers, program managers, as a Navy, come to an agreement on limiting some of the complexity we build into our ships today? We build our ships in some systems, HM&E systems, where our sailors get to a point they cannot maintain and operate effectively some of our systems. We build, networks for our engineering plants with 13,000 plus signals. How do we?
13,000? That's an archaic ship. Where's Zumwalt? Who's here from Zumwalt?
He's back there. Admiral Morgan's back in the back.
Yes. 37, no, it's more than 37. 37,000 is an LPD. The carrier is about 50,000. Zumwalt makes them all pale in comparison. But go ahead.
But it's really, we have to remember as engineers and program managers, our ships are operated by young sailors in a lot of cases. That's the bulk of our Navy. And how, advice and recommendations for program managers and engineers, how we maintain that understanding of did you go too far, too complex with a system?
Yeah, let me, I'm going to broaden that question out, okay? Most of my difficult discussions, whether it's on the Hill, in the Pentagon, on the waterfront, or in a room like this, goes like this. It all starts with requirements. It all starts with requirements. When, this goes back to the question from Levin McCain. You know, they want to know how to fix, you know, acquisition. It starts with requirements. If you look at, I talked about the great successes. If you look at the great failures, it was because of a great mismatch between the requirement, what we thought it was going to cost, what technology could accomplish, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, there's a trail of billions of dollars that were invested in programs that the program's requirements were wrong at the outset and they were not able to deliver in the end. And so whether it's the degree of complexity versus the sailor who's got to operate that system, or the degree of complexity versus our ability to deliver that system, you know, within the money that we've got, it goes back to requirements. So what are we doing? Anybody here from LXR? Nope, okay. Willie, go, keep raising your hand, Willie. Well, actually, Willie was a part of this. Whether it's LXR, whether it was the CVN 79, the Ohio replacement, no longer does somebody in a vacuum write a requirement about what they want, and it gets passed along the way, and it gets tossed over the fence to the engineering and design community to come up with it, and it gets tossed over the fence to industry to build it. No longer does it go like that. We spend great amount of time at the front end, and when I say we, includes the CNO at the table, discussing what the requirements are they achievable, are they realistic, are they affordable, what trades need to be made, and on and on and on to get the requirements right at the outset. And when you get the requirements community, which includes the fleet, as well as the resource sponsor, and the technical community, the systems commands and the program offices that are going to ultimately be held accountable for executing, when you get them all together, throw in the cost estimating group, and you hammer and hammer and hammer away at the requirement, the capability that's going to be needed to deliver the requirement, the cost of that capability, the maturity of the technology that's assumed in there, and the risk that's all being brought to bear, you arrive at a much better program that you can confidently execute than we had in the past. And that's exactly what we're doing now. Now, that's a good answer for Levin McCain, but they can't help us with that. They can't help us with that. That's our job, to get the requirements right at the outset. And that's how we're going about business. We are in the middle of CVN 79. And walked across the hall to CNO last week and I said, we're at a decision point. I want you to sit at the head of the table to be the guy making the decision. And it's a decision that most people would look at and say, well, that's an acquisition matter. I don't think so. I think it's a Navy matter. And I think it's so important. I think it's so important that not only does the CNO need to be aware of it, but everyone in and out of uniform that reports to the CNO needs to know that this is decided. This is what we're going to go do. And then we move forward and execute. So whether it's the number of signals, or whether it's a coupling gear on an LCS, whether it's a hydraulic system on an LPD, whether it's a launching system on an aircraft carrier, whether it's batter boards on an amphib welder, you pick it. The technical community, the program, the requirements community, which is not just in the Pentagon, out in the fleet, need to argue, need to hammer, need to debate, need to decide on what the right thing is. And that decision better be based on understanding the complexity, understanding the risk, understanding the cost, so that when we all sign up, we can do what we promised we're going to do. Because there is absolutely no opportunity for do-overs anymore. Okay? So I started, and I'll finish with thanking you all for what you do for our Navy and Marine Corps. It does take a nation. It does take great people. We've got a bunch. Now go out there and teach the rest to yearn for that vast and endless sea. Thank you. I'll take care of getting that award back, all right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll leave it there for now.
Okay, really appreciate it. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being here. First, thank you very much for the honor with Mr. Kiss and all he did. But as a past president of the society, for us in the society, it's really marvelous that the award honors him and engineering and what he did for the nation. I'm going to take just a second. How many folks are in the audience who are under 35? If you need no,
all sitting in the back.
yeah, and if you need no finer example of what you can do in the rest of your life to lead this nation, there is no finer example than the gentleman to my left. This is a man who was an engineer, was a program manager, understands the politics, understands the economics, and drove his career to the success he has today. So I just recommend him as a leader to think about modeling on. Mr. Secretary, in your honor, we're going to make a contribution to the Wounded Warrior Program, and thank that very much, and thank you very, very much for stimulating us this morning, John.